The thumbnail for "To us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace," Isaiah 9:6, "and the government shall be on his shoulders." A Merry Christmas. It's a zodiac. Tim Alberino. There we go, I got it. Tim Alberino. He wrote a book called The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse. And we're going to hear what he has to say. I'm going to do a commentary on his show. He did a show with Quite Frankly, and it was very interesting, very informative. So this is for educational purpose only. And we'll see what he has to say. And I compare mankind seeing the light of Jesus Christ at Christmas time with Saul seeing Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus. Jesus' light is 10 times brighter than the sun. And Saul heard the voice of Jesus. And so when we get saved, we should see the light of Christ and share the light of Christ. And men should hear the voice of God. So, Age of Aquarius is the New Age Christianity developed out of End Times Theology. You have to pick and choose verses in the Bible to fit your belief, then throughout the rest of the Bible. I found a site, The Christian Astrologer, on the Age of Aquarius, the Return of Christ. And they have Aquarius in here. This picture is Aquarius. It's pretty short, but it's about the New Age medical technology, medical care, quantum leaps, energy. Let me see here. We are experiencing the energetic shift of humanity and the transformation of consciousness. We are moving into the Age of Aquarius. In the Bible, it states these things happened to them as an example and were written down as a warning for us, on whom fulfillment of the ages has come. We can no longer think or live as we have been. Humanity needs to change to survive. To ensure survival, we've all heard of global warming now, and each day the weather is so chaotic that we don't know what we are going to experience. One day it snows, the next day extremely hot, and weather anomalies are happening all over the world. Is this the end of the world or just preparation for something bigger than us? Jesus talked in the Bible about the changes in the future that would signal his return. He said there will be signs in the moon and the stars and the sun. Luke 21:25, signaling his return. Aquarius rules astrology, so maybe astrology will be taken more seriously by the masses during this new age. None of us can deny that he discussed earthquakes, famines, weather changes, and disasters. These things have been going on for decades since Christ, so what makes now so important? Why are people so afraid? The end is near. The astrological ages. It is believed that Jesus Christ and Christianity started the Age of Pisces, and Pisces astrologically symbol is the fish, and the fish is associated with the Christian faith and was used secretly by them to identify Jesus was the fisher of men and known to talk symbolically about fish. Pisces traditionally rules spiritually, compassion, sacrifice, service to others, and faith. All these are strong during the Piscean age, and it was a time when the largest religion of the world was started. Now we have high-speed innovation. We are moving into the Aquarian age, and often associated with the New Age, as Aquarius rules all things non-traditional, non-conformity, rebellious, questioning, theological, and scientific. Aries rules electricity, computers, airplanes, flight, democracy, humanitarian efforts, and astrology. The appearance of these Aquarian developments over the last few centuries is considered by many astrologers to indicate the proximity of the Aquarian age. According to astrologers, there is no uniform agreement about the relationship of these recent Aquarian develops and the age of Aquarius. The water bearer in the Bible, some astrologers believe that the New Age is experienced before the Aquarian age arrives because of the cuspal effort of the orb of influence. Other astrologers believe the appearance of Aquarian developments indicate the actual arrival of the age of Aquarius, believe that we are currently experiencing it. Jesus was one who announced the age of Aquarius and said, "A man will meet you carrying an earthen pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he goes." Luke 22:10. Since ancient times, Aquarius is called the water bearer and symbolizes the face of a man in the book of Revelations as one of the fixed signs of the zodiac. So Aquarius is symbolized by a man carrying a jug of water. This exists in ancient times. It's interesting that Jesus tells us to follow the water bearer. Jesus was telling his followers to follow Aquarian age and enter the house he goes in, which can mean he was helping us prepare for the future by telling us to follow his new spiritual expansion and rebirth. Jesus was educating the disciples and warning them about this crucial time in human history and preparing them for an advance. Now, this is what I call, the Age of Aquarius is all about alignment and represents spiritually coming together with science. It is a time in history where religion and science need to unite and create better medical innovations and medical technologies to help humanity. It is a time where we can use science to help validate religion and God instead of fighting over the creation theory. So this is what I call End Times Theology, New Age Christianity, Return of Christ. I'm not supporting that theology at all. I'm just telling you what there are a group of people out there, a big group of people who agree with this. Somehow we can prove on what God did when he created the earth. In part 1, we went over lost paradise, and we went over the creation of earth, and God said it is good, it is perfect the way it was. It doesn't need any improvement. Actually, we need to be reconciled back to it. We showed dinosaurs, we showed huge plants and huge insects. They have more oxygen, they have more air to breathe, they have more moisture in the air. A huge dinosaur needs to take in a huge big breath. Okay, and so they need a lot more oxygen. We have less oxygen than we did then, and there was more moisture in the air. And we'll read this and find out more about it. But Timothy Alberino is highly intelligent. He knows what he's talking about here. His end times, I don't quite agree with, that's all. But I do the same with Bo Pony. There's a lot of intelligence, and so we can learn from each other. We don't all have all the answers. So Timothy Alberino, that's his .com if you want to find him. Look him up. Is an explorer, researcher, and an expert in ancient civilizations, UFOs, biblical prophecy, and more. Talks about one of the most famous celestial events in human history, the appearance of the Christmas star, End Times author. And I'm going to quite frankly, introduce his guest here.
The Alberino's appetite for adventure has led him all over the planet in search of lost cities, lost civilizations, hidden treasures, and legendary creatures. We still haven't done so much of this stuff. I want to talk about hidden treasure, legendary creatures. I still want to talk about him going in, his Amazon adventures too. He is also an avid researcher and published author whose scholarly pursuits enables him to dissertate with authority on a wide variety of esoteric topics, including theories on alternative history, ancient mythologies, megalithic architecture, giants, Bigfoot, and other cryptids, UFOs and alien abduction, transhumanism and emerging technologies, occult conspiracy, and Christian eschatology. We're going to be on a little bit more of the Christian side of things, since we're taking a Christmas kind of a theme here tonight, and I can't wait to get him on, so let's go do that right now. Timothy Alberino. No, hold on. There we go. And welcome to the show again, Timothy Alberino. It's great to have you back.
Hey, Frank, my pleasure.
So every time I read through your bio, I'm always reminded of all the things we have to talk about still. It's not even just the lost civilizations, the hidden treasures, the legendary creatures. I still have to ask you about your time, a lot of different specific things about your time in the Amazon, especially when it comes to psychic travels and ayahuasca and things like that. That's going to be
next. I like the saying. He said, we're talking about the demise of what's going on around us right now, and he's saying, I thought it was a really good statement. He hopes that these waters break on the rock of American freedom. And my commentary on the author's commentary, the flood would be of the enemy right now that we're going through, and a wave crashing down would be on the rock of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is like the Declaration of Independence, a liberty in which Christ sets us free to obey God and God only, not the dictates of mere mortal men who have no hope in themselves to save themselves from his sinful condition, who has no hope to save himself. All men must look to Jesus Christ, the light, for wisdom, the Christian principles, the teachings for salvation. Without the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the power of God that leads men to salvation, there is no liberty, there is no freedom. And hopefully you'll see this is why machines are hurting everybody. We are dependent on machines, and we are unable to use our whole minds, and we're able to be enslaved by evil people. And this is supposed, the picture to the right would be representing Jesus as a light, and the waters breaking on the rock of Jesus Christ. And I call that, or he says rock of American freedom. Of course, that's based on the gospel of Jesus Christ.
We're almost gotten through the entire alphabet here. Makes you wonder what's in store for Omega.
Well, if the elite globalists have their way, it'll be perpetual COVID hysteria for years to come. They're getting everything they want from this pandemic, and they're going to keep it alive as long as they can. Things that they could not have imagined of being able to do just 3 years ago, they're now accomplishing because of fear, through the medium of fear. And so, the United States is becoming the last bastion of hope to repel this globalist takeover, this leftist globalist takeover. Really, what we're seeing in America is a Marxist takeover, neo-Marxist takeover, and they're of course using the crisis of COVID to achieve their goals. I hope that this whole thing. I hope that these waters break on the rock of American freedom. Let's put it that way, which very well could happen. As I said, we're the last bastion of hope and freedom here. And there's one thing that Americans have that all these other nations that are folding to the mandatory vaccinations don't have, and that is guns. Mm-hmm. The American populace is still armed, and so that might be our saving grace.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, just to hold that up against what you were saying before, that there's an opportunity to achieve things that would have never thought possible just 3 years ago. And what is, I think that those guns right there that you just brought up is the deciding factor between us becoming Australia. really getting berated by whoever is inside these concentration camps, telling them you have to stay on your porch, you can't go down the hallway unless you're doing anything but approved laundry, and stay. I mean, the way that what they're doing to people that have been for so long completely made helpless, and like you said, only a time like this would they even have the gall or the opportunity at their feet to try this kind of I don't know, it's slavery. It really is.
And all people have to do is to stop being afraid. That's it. Stop fearing COVID. I mean, COVID can be very serious, but
so it's because of our dependency on machines, and we're not able to use our whole minds. Like when we see the stars, that exercises our mind. Gardening exercises our mind, and we'd even do a math without a calculator, without a computer. Telephones, all this stuff, getting water from the faucet, electricity, this actually stupefies us. So we're not using our whole mind. We're unable to defend ourselves. That doesn't leave us hopeless, because we serve a God of all hope. And probably I'll do part 3, and you'll see how we have all things to be hopeful for. Let's go to 39.
Seen so many explanations for this phenomenon, ones that involve real celestial movement at the time, others that explain this through and depict it as a purely supernatural event in nature, and then some explanations have a little bit of both. So I wanted to see where you would start to break this down and talk about what was happening in the skies a little over 2,000 years ago.
Well, this is a very complicated subject, and there's a lot to say about it. It gets very complex. However, there were definitely some unique astronomical phenomena occurring around the time of Christ's birth. And in fact, I would even go so far as to say unprecedented astronomical phenomena, the way that things were aligning. And the Hebrews certainly should have known, at least the scribes should have known, that Christ was going to be born at the time he was born, because it was prophesied in some very interesting ways, in ways that most people don't even realize, because it has to do with what's called precession of the equinoxes and other astronomical phenomena. And what really separates modern man from ancient man, if you want to consolidate it to one thing, I would say what separates us from the ancients is the fact that we have lost track of the celestial timepiece. In other words, the stars. We no longer watch the stars. Most of us can't hardly even see them anymore because of the light pollution. But the stars, the astronomical phenomena of the heavens, day and night, but especially night, literally govern the lives of the ancients. And that includes all the way through the ancient world until the modern age. It told them when the seasons were coming, when it was time to plant and harvest, and it was the mechanism by which all of their celebrations were based upon. It was this celestial timepiece. It literally governed the lives of the ancient peoples. And what's really amazing is that they all had the same timepiece. And when I say they all, I mean every people group on the planet had some form of the zodiac, and it was almost always the same. Even the figures and the constellations, the signs of the zodiac were ubiquitous across the earth for the most part. And especially in Mesopotamia. In fact, I would say that Mesopotamia, the ancient Near East in general, was the cradle of astronomy and astrology of the ancient world. And so we all know that the story of when Christ was born, that the Magi came from the east, probably from Babylon, Acadia, or Chaldea, and they came to visit who they called the King of the Jews, that was apparently born according to the signs in the heavens. And these were, when you talk about Magi, sometimes it's translated as wise men, and erroneously as kings. These were astronomers, and these were individuals who were part of an ancient tradition, an ancient Mesopotamian tradition. They were watchers of the sky, and they were the scribes of their time, and part of the intelligentsia of that age. And so when they came seeking Christ, this was not a casual occurrence. This was one of the most, if not the most, momentous astrological phenomena that they had ever witnessed. And they what's important to note is that they accurately followed the signs in the heavens and came to the place where Christ was born.
Well, can I ask you about that right there? Because this is one of those things I said, these stories.
So that had to do with astronomic timepieces for the ancients. Now we'll go to 45 to 50. 20. Advent is a huge event that is happening. Age of Pisces, triple conjunction. There's Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. Heavenly timepiece clicked into a new age. Announcement of the greatest king that would ever be born, an eternal king.
But in brief, and because this is very complex, there's a lot of material here that I'm going to have to skip because we don't have time to go over it. But in brief, there was something called a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn taking place in 7 BC, and this is documented fact. This is called a great conjunction. Jupiter and Saturn represent king. They're symbols of royalty, of their regal symbols, and so they're associated with kings. Jupiter and Saturn are. And a great conjunction is when two planets appear to come together in the sky, and they align in the sky, and that occurred in 7 BC. And after that great, which was in and of itself a monumental astrological and astronomical sign. And after the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in 7 BC, the following year, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars were massed in the constellation of Pisces, and that would be in 6 BC. And that is exceedingly important. Why? Because the age of Pisces was being inaugurated. In fact, Christ's birth corresponded with the inauguration of the Age of Pisces, which is often overlooked, especially today, by modern people, because we don't realize how consequential that was. But the ancients surely did. And that, by the way, was predicted, and not predicted in the way that most Christians would know about, because you have to understand precession of the equinoxes, and unfortunately most of us have forgotten things that the ancients were very much aware of, at least the scribes and the astrologers and the astronomers. It's, when we talk about astronomers and when we talk about astronomers and astrologers, today these are two very different things. Today you have astronomers, who are the people working at NASA and working, professionally, trying to land rockets on Mars and so forth. It's a very scientific field today. But in the ancient world, astronomy and astrology were basically the same thing. They were tied very tightly together, and it wasn't a world of fantasy and fiction. It was very scientific, but the astronomy and astrology were always meant to be bound together. When I say astrology, I'm not talking about any magic or sorcery or anything like that. I'm talking about the signs in the heavens, the zodiac, the precession of the equinoxes, and all of the different mythological stories related to them that really functioned as coded language, as esoteric language to encode scientific data. So in the ancient world, and that's why I keep tripping over these two words, because they're really combined in the ancient context. Astronomy, astrology are meshed together in the ancient world. We've separated them today, and we've lost a lot of information by doing that. And again, when I talk about astrology, don't think about the astrological signs in the back of the newspaper that that so many of us are familiar with when there were newspapers. That's just garbage. It has nothing to do with ancient astrology. So there was a triple conjunction, what's called the Great Conjunction, happening. There was the massing of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in the sign of Pisces, which was the new age that we were changing from Aries to Pisces at the time of Christ's birth. There was also a lunar occultation of Jupiter twice that happened in 6 BC. So all these things are corresponding together, and the ancients, especially the wise men from the East, The astronomers of the East are watching these things happen in an unprecedented way. Also, there was likely a comet that appeared in the heavens in 5 BC, and so the combination of these things is really would have been unprecedented. And why unprecedented? Because when you take the Great Conjunction, when you take the massing of those 3 planets in the constellation Pisces, and then when you take the most important feature of all of this, that heavenly timepiece is now clicking over into a new age, which happens to be the Age of Pisces. When you take all of those things together, what you have is an unprecedented scenario, an unprecedented phenomena that is being observed. And really the combination of these 3 things is what announced the birth of not only the King of the Jews, but the greatest king that would ever be born on planet Earth. That's what was being announced. An eternal king, by the way, an eternal king. And I don't have time to break down why that is. People can look that up on their own, but that's what those phenomena were announcing, was the birth of the greatest and eternal king who would be born, and he happened to be born in Bethlehem in a manger at that time.
So on the side, the picture on the side to the left is Pisces. That shows the sign in the sky. Bring it up a little. So this is what it looks like when you're looking up there. It has to do with water. Covenant, 2,000 years, transitioning to Age of Pisces. And basically, he takes you from Abraham, actually from Noah to Abraham, to Jesus Christ. It's like 2,000 years. He says 2,160 years. I just say 2,000 years because people can understand that. And the first 2,000 years with Abraham to Jesus Christ was supposed to be the age of Aries, the ram. And then when Jesus was born, you were started the age of Pisces. So we'll go 50.
It's garbage. That is not ancient astrology. Shouldn't even be called astrology because it has nothing to do with ancient astrology. Ancient astrology was, for all intents and purposes, astronomy. It was astronomy. In fact, I'm going to say something that probably would surprise Christian viewers in your audience. It's God who implemented astrology. When you talk about the zodiac, when you talk about the signs of the zodiac, because this is what the ancients were really looking at was the zodiac. And for those who think that the zodiac is a pagan celestial mechanism, it certainly is not. It's exactly the same in the Hebrew cosmology, except in the Hebrew cosmology, it's called the Mazzaroth. And the Mazzaroth and the zodiac are the same thing. It's the same mechanism. And everybody is familiar with the zodiac. It's the celestial wheel in which that's divided into 12 parts. So it's, for those who aren't familiar, imagine a wheel divided into 12 sections, equal sections, and each section has a particular sign, which represents a constellation in the heavens. And each one of those signs is in a fixed position, and again represents the celestial sphere. And the celestial sphere was the earth is a sphere, and then around the earth the ancients imagined another sphere called the celestial sphere. Not a literal sphere, but this was a figurative sphere on which the stars were painted. And so their observation of the heavens, this celestial sphere would turn, and it was like a big timepiece. And in fact, that's what we're told by God in the book of Genesis, that the sun and the moon and the stars were created to be a timepiece in the heavens. And so, it's important, as I said before, that this celestial sphere was not just, the zodiac was not like the horoscope in the newspaper for the ancients. This was telling them all about the world in which they lived. It was giving them actionable scientific information, because the only thing on earth that the only thing in the lives of the ancients that could be that was unchangeable, absolutely unchangeable, inexorable, was the movement of the heavens. Everything else was subject to change. You could have good springs, bad springs, good winters, bad winters. You could have good times of planting and harvesting, or you could have natural disasters, earthquakes. So, and in the ancient world, these things were absolutely devastating, because if something went wrong, if your harvest was ruined, then what you would have as a result was famine and death, mass death. And so this was very important for the ancients to know what season they were in and what time they were in. And again, it governed all of their their festivals and their I want to say holidays, but really it was much deeper, much more important than what we call holidays today. Time. And again, this is it's and I always say this because it's true. I got a billion things running through my mind at the same time, trying to consolidate this as clearly as possible. But it is so complex. And let's talk really quickly, because one of the most important things to understand, aside from the phenomena that I've enumerated here, what I want to focus in on very quickly, because this is probably the most important factor when you talk about the Star of Bethlehem. And let's point out right away here that the Star of Bethlehem was not a star. It wasn't just a star. It was a series of astronauts. And the Age of Pisces is the age in which we are now. This is the present age. And the way that the ages are governed is not random. It's not arbitrary. It's fixed. And this is deep ancient knowledge. You can find this knowledge, as I said, in almost every ancient major.
So it goes on to the reason you can tell what age it is. The Pisces rising right before the sun in the east in the spring, around March 20th to 21st. The spring solace, and then for the new age, what they call Aquarius will be rising right before the sun in the east. And he goes on to give a deeper explanation of that.
Some 2,000 years ago, he was born at the inauguration of the Age of Pisces. His birth corresponded exactly with the inauguration of the Age of Pisces. By the way, what is the sign of Pisces? It's a fish. What is the sign of Christ? It's a fish. So, and by the way, for those who are, confused and maybe lost in all of this, to condense the idea, if you're lost here, because it took me a long time to grasp all of this. I'm not very good at math, and astronomy is essentially math. And so it took me a very long time to start to relearn some of what was lost through the ages in terms of this astronomical knowledge, which of course is well known to modern astronomers, but isn't really discussed very much because it's not seen as important information. But it is important information, especially as it pertains to biblical prophecy. So if you stand at any point on the earth during the spring equinox, which is around the 21st of March, and you look due east before dawn, you're going to see a particular constellation sitting right above the horizon in the place where the sun is about to rise. And for 2,000 years, that constellation has been Pisces. And that's how you measure what age you're in. It happens on the spring equinox, the vernal equinox. So if you want to know what age you're in, you stand on anywhere on Earth in the spring equinox, 21st of March, and you look due east. And whatever that constellation is, that zodiacal sign is rising just before the sun rises, that's what age you're in. And right now, if you do that, you're going to see Pisces, because we are in the age of Pisces. Soon, it's going to change to Aquarius, which is another big deal in regards to biblical prophecy.
So he goes on to talk about his book that he wrote, The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse. I think I have another picture here. The Birthright, The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse, and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth. I don't know if I can read this small print. Talks about his insight into biblical prophecy and biblical events. It'll shatter your paradigm. What it says. This is he talks about Abraham sacrifice, Isaac, depicting God sacrificing his only son. God saves Isaac with a ram in the thicket. Jesus, the Lamb of God. God tells him to look behind him. You see a ram. The ram is Aries. So age was Aries. The end of the age was... The age was Aries. The end of the age of Aries, 2,000 years later, would be from Noah and the ark. And it would be when God would sacrifice his son on the cross. Age of Pisces is behind March, which is February. So March is Aries, and then you look behind you to Pisces. So that he says that God is saying the next age will be Pisces, and there would be a sacrifice.
How the ancients measured the precession of the equinox, and that the changing of the ages, each zodiacal house represents an age, and that the changing over from one age to another was monumental in the minds of the ancients. So let's keep that in mind. So I want to bring us to a story in the Old Testament that most people are familiar with. It's the story of Abraham and Isaac, and most of us remember that Abraham was told by God to take his son Isaac and sacrifice him on Mount Moriah. And this is, of course, very controversial, especially for atheists and secularists. They try and bludgeon Christians with this story, accusing God of infanticide or something like that. When really it has nothing to do with that. This is actually what God is actually doing here in the story of Abraham and Isaac. Is He is predicting, He is telling us long in advance, thousands of years in advance, when He would send His son to be a sacrifice for the sins of the world. That's what was happening here. And so this was a play acting event, a story that would be passed down through the generations, so that when Christ came, people would be able to recognize him, and also in the aftermath of Christ, the advent of Christ. So Abraham is told by God to take Isaac up to Mount Moriah to sacrifice his son. He told him, take your son, your only son, and sacrifice him as a burnt offering. So Abraham, who's faithful to God, this of course would have been very obviously a very difficult thing for Abraham to do, but nevertheless he did it because he had faith in God. So he took his boy Isaac and some wood and the implements he needed for the sacrifice, and they went to Mount Moriah. And when they ascended to Mount Moriah, Abraham prepared the altar, and he laid his son, his only son, his beloved son. He laid him on the sacrificial pyre, and he took his knife and he raised it, and he was about to stab it through Isaac's heart so that he could offer him up as a burnt offering. And in that moment, before Abraham thrust his knife into his son's chest, a voice spoke to him from heaven. God spoke to him and said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked. I'm reading from the scripture here. And behold, behind him was a ram. Now, remember this. Behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son Isaac. So Abraham called the name of that place, "The Lord will provide." So Abraham was about to sacrifice his son, but in the last moment, God told him not to do it, and instead there was a ram whose horns were stuck in the bushes, and God said, "I have provided a ram. Sacrifice the ram instead of your son," to paraphrase. So we all know, most Christians realize that this whole scenario was a prediction that God was going to offer his own son, his only begotten son, his only son, as a sacrifice for the sins of mankind. And that's exactly what it represents. And we all know that. Most Christians are familiar with that. But what they don't realize is that encoded in this story is the exact time that God's Son would appear. And why? Because it has to do with the precession of the equinox. And what I just said, that Christ was born in the age of Pisces. At the inauguration of the age of Pisces, his birth corresponded with the inauguration of a new age, the age of Pisces. And so there's a concept that the ancients knew, and in fact it's still known today among those who still understand the precession of the equinoxes, that as I said before, if you look due east on the vernal equinox on March 21st, right before the sun rises, that constellation that is sitting on the horizon.
He gives a brief synopsis. The sacrificial post, the ram in the thicket, represents Jesus on the cross. Timothy goes on teaching his version of End Times Theology, end of the age, end of Pisces, end of the age of Jesus.
It's Aries, which is a ram. So think about this. Christ, in this story of Abraham, we know that it prefigures the coming of Christ, the only Son of God that would be given as a sacrifice for the sin of mankind, for the sin of Adam. We know that signifies that God would provide his own Son as a sacrifice. But what most people don't realize is he tells us when. Because there was a ram that was bound in the bushes. Its horns were stuck in the bushes. So in other words, it was bound to the sacrificial post, stuck in the bushes as Abraham was about to sacrifice his son, Isaac, who represented the Son of God, Jesus of Nazareth. And so if you take that sign, Jesus representing Pisces, which he does, his symbol is the fish, even today, the next constellation that's being consumed in the sun beneath Pisces at the inauguration of the age of Pisces is Aries, the ram.
Wow.
Hence, the story of Abraham and Isaac predicts that the Son of God would be offered up for the world, would be born into the world and offered for the sin of mankind in the inaugural years of the age of Pisces.
So what does that do?
When the ram, Aries, is being consumed in the sun on the sacrificial post. And, you can even further the analogy, that sacrificial post, that sacrificial tree, that sacrificial cross, that post representing the cross of Christ, that Christ would be sacrificed on the post for the sins of mankind. That is impossible to predict from a human perspective. But it is predicted in the story of Abraham and Isaac, and it's part of the reason why the inauguration of the age of Pisces was such a big deal in the minds of the ancients. It heralded the coming of a king, not just the king of the Jews. And by the way, what was the sign that was nailed into the top of the cross when Christ was hanging there? It was King of the Jews, which is exactly what the Magi who came from the east said, that this King of the Jews was going to be born. And not just a king of the Jews, he was to be an eternal king, the greatest king that would ever be born, by signified by the signs that happened, that were taking place in the heavens, the phenomena. It wasn't just a star. It was the conflagration of all these signs together that were unprecedented, fulfilling not only in the minds of the wise men from the east, all these of the great astronomical significance, but also directly fulfilling prophecy. The prophecy that was prefigured in the event that was prefigured with Abraham and Isaac on Mount Moriah. I find that to be absolutely.
And we've talked a lot about, and I've written plenty of blogs, and Leah and Michelle have written a lot and spoke a lot about, in 2014, there were blood moons on Jewish holidays, and It happened for heavens over and over again. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 or 17. That never happened. Eclipses. The eclipse went across America, and then another one's coming in, I think, 2027. But there's all these signs happening right now. So something very great, very, very, very great, very powerful is going to happen. Because God does speak in the stars. When you see all this stuff happening a lot at one time. And there were 3 different years of Jubilee. 2015 was a year of Jubilee. 2016 was a Jubilee. And 17 was a year of Jubilee. Jubilee means cancellation of all debts, return of the people to the land. And that's what I believe God's going to do. He's going to return everybody back to the land. He's going to heal the entire earth. And return it back to the days where we have so much oxygen that, you know, the dinosaurs lived in. Next, 29 to 30, Age of Aquarius. Next is the post-human future, robot future. Now, he is selling his book, so he's telling you hints out of his book that he's written. And, of course, he wants everybody to go to his website. Right there, you can see it. Go order his book, because he's an End Times author.
In their white papers about the intention on actually re-engineering humanity itself. 100 years based on where we are right now.
100 years, there will scarcely be a human being left on this planet. In my estimation, most of the populace will be post-human, and that's where we're headed. And for those of you who want to learn more about that, you can get my book, Birthright, the coming post-human apocalypse and the usurpation of Adam's dominion on planet Earth. That's exactly what I talk about in that book. Is that at the end of the age, when we're at that transition point between Pisces and Aquarius, the beast is going to arise, and in that time, most of the populace on the Earth will be in a post-human condition. There will be a post-human paradigm on planet Earth. Now, you know, when I wrote that a couple of years ago, it was still people. There was still room for criticism and doubt, but I don't think there is any more room for doubt that that's where we're headed. We are headed into a post-human future, and we are headed there rapidly. I don't know if you've seen the new some of the new videos of the most advanced robots. Yeah, the humanoid robots that are floating around on the internet. I mean, absolutely frightening, terrifying. Even on one of those, I saw it on.
So there is this book right there he's talking about. And then just a short little one. Christmas is the hope of humanity. Christ returns as king, vanquishes the beast, sets up his kingdom, and destroys the beast's kingdom to be an eternal king.
Well, that's why it is hopeful.
Sorry about that.
Christmas is the reason that it is hopeful. What Christmas represents is the hope of humanity. Because according to Christian theology, Christ returns and vanquishes the beast and destroys his empire. And that's the end of the story. So,
and I guess
when he sets up his own kingdom and reigns on the earth, he's an eternal king.
And the last little clip here is a synopsis of the whole thing.
Lost 7 BC. So this is counting down from 7 BC. 7 BC. The Magi, the wise men who must have been astrologers in Persia, Babylon, saw the great conjunction in Pisces, astronomically associated with Israel. That's a point I forgot to mention. A Messiah king will be born in Israel. That's what that signified to them. 6 BC. Then followed the massing of the planets in the same constellation. While there were lunar occultations of Jupiter, the planets were visible from Babylon in the western sky after sunset, and this signaled it will be a mighty king, and I would add an eternal king. In 5 BC, the comet in Capricornus confirms that the king has been born. Capricornus signifies the rebirth of the sun, Tropic of Capricorn. Magi decide to travel to Jerusalem. Now that's an important thing, because you talk about the rebirth or the birth of the Son. There's another signal there on that prophetic implication from the story of Abraham and Isaac. Again, in 5 BC, another event that happened in 5 BC, travel from Babylon to Jerusalem, assuming that these wise men came from Babylon. Travel from Babylon to Jerusalem will take 1 to 2 months. In Jerusalem, Herod's advisors told them that the king should be born in Bethlehem, according to Micah's biblical prophecy. So it was Herod. Remember, the wise men went to Herod because they inquired, the great king is born and we want to go worship him, right? We want to go give him these gifts. And what did Herod say? When you find him, notify me. Remember the story. And what did Herod do? They were warned in a dream. These wise men were warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, because Herod wanted to kill Christ, wanted to kill this baby that was born. And in fact, he killed all the children. I believe it was 3 years old and younger. He perpetuated and perpetrated an infanticide in the region to try and eliminate Christ. But if you remember the story, an angel came to Joseph and I believe it was in a dream and told them to flee to Egypt. So the wise men, I'm answering your question, by the way, how did they know to get to Bethlehem? The wise men inquired of Herod, most likely, and Herod, knowing the prophecy from the book of Micah in the Old Testament, from Micah the prophet in the Old Testament, was able to direct them to Bethlehem, where it was prophesied that the king would be born. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, so far.
And then again in 5 BC, the comet was then seen in the south before sunrise, the direction of Bethlehem from Jerusalem. The Magi traveled to Bethlehem. After returning to Herod, they answered his questions of the date of the star's appearance, which could be anything up to 2 years prior to that. So Herod decides to have the boys under the age of 2 slain. Then a comet appeared, according to Chinese records, in March 5th BC and was visible for over 70 days. It appeared in Capricornus and was first seen in the east before sunrise. Then it moved south. So
I'm done with the little clips on that, and we'll go into Aquarius. Represents water, not the man. This end game doesn't work out. I loved everything he was teaching. Really good information. We have lost our ability to instantly read the stars, the times, and the season. It is a gift from God that was robbed from us by evil men. Like Bo Pony, he has a lot right, and I share Bo Pony stuff all the time. I don't agree with everybody, but we lost. Bo Pony has a gift, and this man has a gift. It's given to him by God. He knows more than I do on this topic, of course. If the Age of Pisces was Jesus Christ, the Age of Aquarius is man, this would be signifying transhumanism. Logically, the next 2,000 years would be what is planned by the New World Order and Satan worshippers. Going to Mars, space travel, living under surveillance state, no one living the natural way, babies being born, raised in incubators, robots running everything, mankind enslaved by the machines, etc. The technology already has been created and patented. And to the right, the little sign, it says, the lighthouse. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16. And to the left, I consider that your electricity, your telephone wires all around the world. We have wires all around the world, and soon they want to go wireless, but then we have radiation flying all around the world. It's all killing us. It's going to be like electricity going through the air, and the satellites beaming down on us. We'll be surrounded by the 5G and everything. That radiation will be killing us. Those who believe this is the future first have to kill God and his creation. So all men become dependent on machines to replace organic life. Man trying to be God. They're causing volcanoes to cover the sky and cool the earth. You've got the carbon taxes to have everyone on earth contributing to this end goal of this deranged, demonically possessed people. The goal, I'll fix that later, is to destroy oxygen that you and I breathe every day. And if you go to Stop the Crime, it's an organization in California trying to stop the insanity in California. They found out that sucking the oxygen out of the air is the end game, and oxygen out of water. And then that's what you have for your new age. Stop the Crime channel. They have lots and lots, tons of information, just tons of information. I mean, she has documents after documents after documents of all the crimes that they are committing globally and in California. But there, Jesus, of his kingdom, there shall be no end. But just as Abraham entered into the covenant with God, then Jesus made a new everlasting covenant. The next age will be reconciliation of the earth to God and the manifestation of sons of God, which almost all scholars agree on. It's just a matter of how we get there. I just do not believe it is through the body of Christ being wiped out under the weight of suffering and being transformed that God's going to come back and save the earth. To Isaiah 9, 6 through 7, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, and of the increase of his government and peace there is no end. But I see the future as glorious, healing and restoration of all things, that man back to the earth, man owning his own land, farming, lifestyle changes where people get used to doing what they used to do and use 100% of our brains, unscrambling eggs, a divine miracle. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, then he fell off the wall. I don't know the whole thing. And all the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I'm saying only Jesus can heal all things. And that's all of us calling out on God ourselves right now, today. And we see a great, great revival happening. It's happening. I have heard people talking about how bad technology and machines are. I thought I was the only one saying it. But I'm hearing it more often and more often and more often. The quantum financial system, people are saying how bad it's going to be in the surveillance state. More people are coming out against this. And I'm glad I'm just not the only one anymore. For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, Isaiah 9:6. Jesus is going to bring us all peace. When you use your whole mind, farming is easy, living is easy, we build up the oxygen, it's going to be easier to breathe, we're going to have so much more strength, we'll be much stronger, more moisture in the air, we'll be stronger. I'm going to stop here and then I'll bring back part 3 probably tomorrow. This is PG signing off.
On holy night, the world becomes one. It is the night to let go of hatred and fear and God. Nations and beliefs, they share the same issue. A thrill of hope, for the world will join. A new and glorious home. A new and glorious morn. Merry Christmas.